Hello, I'm Sally Wiener Grotta, and this is What If, Why Not, How? Where I ask people who have interesting stories and ideas questions that are on my mind. My guest today is Canadian-Israeli author Gila Green, who has published 6 novels in 3 countries and numerous short works in literary magazines, anthologies, all over the place. Her latest thriller, which I highly recommend, is With a Good Eye. It will be published this coming August, but it is available on pre-order at Amazon at present. She has another novel in the works that will be published in 2025, which is a follow-on of With a Good Eye, called The Inheritance, but it predates it chronologically. Her work has been shortlisted for the Doris Bakwin Literary Award, WordSmitten's TenTen Fiction Contest, twice for the Walrus Literary Award, and twice for the Hoffer Best New Writing Award. Gila is also a coach who guides emerging talent in both fiction and nonfiction, and she's also an EFL college lecturer. EFL stands for English as a Foreign Language, and she has an MA in creative writing from Bar Ilan University. Welcome, Gila. I'm delighted you could join me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sally. It's a pleasure to be here.
Just to give our audience a taste of your wonderful prose, could you share a little bit of the new book, With a Good Eye, with us?
Okay, sure. This is towards the end of the novel. I'm going to read you a scene. There's been a lot of suspense building up into this scene. Luna Levy is the heroine of the novel. She's our 19 and then 20-year-old heroine, and she's working behind a bar that her mother owns. But her mother's taken on some very sort of bad news partners with this bar, and Luna is not pleased, and they've been waiting a long time for the second partner to actually get out of jail and show up. So this is the scene where Douglas shows up at the bar when Luna and her mother are working that evening. There's electricity in the air, on the ground, on the long black marble counter, everywhere. There's something about this Douglas that makes everything around him hum. Luna has never wanted to kill her mother before. She puts 2 cups of ice in a blender, crushes it to bits, pours rye and ginger ale over it, and downs it in one swallow. Bang, boot, smash, crash. There's a major brawl in minutes. Luna was so hyper-focused on her mother's cornball reaction to Douglas's entrance, she missed the start of the very thing she's been terrified of for weeks. Luna struck with terror when Douglas pounds a guy's head with a telephone receiver. Blood gushes down the side of his temples over Douglas's hand onto the counter. "Mom!" Luna screams. But Luna can't find her mother. She weaves around the restaurant searching for her. She gives up. She has to get Ian and get out of here. In the kitchen, Judith's on the phone in what they call the back office. "There you are. Where's Ian? Where's everybody?" Judith hangs up without even a goodbye. They heard the cops were called and took off. Judith runs her hands through her hair. Ian's somewhere. Luna can't figure out what her mother's doing in this back office when the cops are on their way. Her mother has her purse over her shoulder. "Flynn's been running the place for almost 4 months, Luna slurs. "This hole is crammed with bikers. Half the customers salivate over Flynn like lapdogs. Now this piece of I don't know what shows up. Have you been drinking?" Judith looks up from the open ledger on the desk. "I'm amazed there's a hair left on my head." Luna hits the wall with her fist. "Why the hell aren't you doing more to take control of your own damn business? Don't you see what's going on? You'll end up with nothing in the end. Like always." Luna stumbles forward and her mother catches her. "You're talking nonsense. How can you be so good at school and so bad in real life? Flynn's my friend. Yours too, if you'd let him. You cannot be here like this when the police show up. Let's go out the back." "Why?" Luna pulls out of her mother's grasp. "You don't want the police to see me serving alcohol to biker gangs? Worried they'll think I'm one of the hookers or strippers?" Thank you.
Whoa. Your characters are so visual, so graphic, and yet poignant and often heartbreaking. Could you go a little bit into your process of how they developed, how they shaped in your mind and in your writing? Are you someone who knows exactly who your characters are when you start, or do they tell you the story and they tell you themselves? How do you handle that?
So the question to that is both. There are some characters like Luna, Luna Levy, who I know from the start. She's a combination of probably three different people in real life, and I take different characteristics from those people to back up the theme, what I want to say. There are other people like Luna's best friend Aiden, who I didn't really know. She's completely fictionalized. She isn't based on anyone. She's probably, a type of fantasy best friend. People who are lonely often have like a fantasy best friend who would always be there for you or never give up on you. But she's not flawless, right? She's quite materialistic. I like to make the characters three-dimensional and nuanced.
Yes, you do.
No perfect characters. So the answer is both. And the harder part is not deciding on the characters, but getting what's in your head on the page. So this took me many attempts. The four main characters, the father, the mother, Luna, and her brother Ronan, took me a long time before I'm not the type of writer who uses a lot of beta readers. I think that too many beta readers are just my personal, the way I work, there's too many opinions and I don't enjoy it. But so I only use two at a time usually. And I try to make them very different people, different ages, from different places, very different from me, so that I don't want an echo chamber beta reader. The less they know me, the better, like on a personal level. Until I could get beta readers to resonate with the characters, that took me many, many drafts, those four core characters. And maybe, I hope it looks easy on the page, but actually it took me a long time. This particular book, it was always, they were two-dimensional, sort of, they're either too mean, too evil, too this. It's always that word too something. And it took me a while to bring them down to earth and make them, yes, larger than life, because it is a novel. So you do want them to be vivid characters, but not coming off as, cartoonish.
What do you want your readers to come away with after reading this book? What is the overarching feeling or ideas that you wanted to give them, or the type of entertainment you wanted to give them from it?
Well, what I really wanted to give them was the idea that there are so many people who I guess we would call them today high functioning. They're high functioning, but they have mental illness, not mental illness like you see in the Hollywood movies of the 80s, or, these really stereotypical, but, they have jobs, they work, they have friends, they do their thing, but they really have major dysfunction. And the children are left having to deal with that. And I hadn't quite encountered that before. I obviously, I don't know if it's obvious, it should be obvious, I read very widely. But either the mental illness is, the person is not high functioning. They're not functioning. They're already either institutionalized somehow or something like that. I'm not giving you medical definitions of high functioning.
No,
I'm just
of course
giving you
not.
like street definitions, or it's the adult's point of view, and how difficult it is for them, whether it's because it's their husband or their own mother, or maybe they have a child, or when I have seen the very few, so it's a teenager talking about her friend she has a friend, and then it turns out this friend has a particular issue. Maybe they're, I don't know, severely depressed or OCD or something like that. But I hadn't seen it from the perspective of children who have to grow up in this house and deal with the negligence of their parents,
Yes.
but yet in a way that they are functioning, again, not taking it to, that they're put in an orphanage or, a much more standard, because I think it's probably a lot more common than people think.
Yeah.
And these children basically have to live double lives because there's so much shame associated with trying to explain parents like that. That was really the message of the book, that they're not alone. There's a lot of people like this, and I was trying to depict what that could be like.
You depicted it quite well, and I felt it was an unusual take on that situation, but it is what I believe a very common situation, and it's hidden in plain sight quite often. So I felt I was quite moved by that choice.
Well, particularly at this time, the book is set in 1980, so there's no internet. There isn't all of this. Now it's very acceptable to talk about a lot of these things. It absolutely was not something that came up in conversation at that time. Definitely not. There weren't a lot of resources. It was just, something that you had to hide. I mean, I'm sure it is still today to a certain extent, but probably today, at least somebody would go online and find some kind of, online support or something, or at least that option exists.
One hopes they would reach out. Very much so. What was one of your biggest challenges or joys in writing this book? What drove you in it?
Well, so that, as I mentioned before, that was one of the biggest challenges. I wanted to create these two parents who were unbelievably dysfunctional and negligent, but they were real people, and they had positive qualities, and they had their reasons, and they had their own unprocessed disappointments and traumas, and to get them as real people took me, like I said, quite a number of tries. I would put the book aside and I would work on another book, and then I would go back to it. Originally, the brother also had a lot more issues, and then I realized someone who read it was just like, it's just too much. It's just too many people. Maybe I'm just not a good enough writer. I don't know. But it was someone was becoming cartoonish. So I reduced the brother and didn't make him as prominent, sort of a problem in Luna's life, and that made it easier for me. Sometimes you have to take away a character or reduce a character or combine a character.
Yes.
In order for your message to be stronger and not weaker, instead of seeing it as a weakness, why can't I just balance this whole cast? You have to, and then I could funnel that into sort of Flynn or the villain or Gustav. I also really enjoy writing villain type characters.
That really comes through.
I think they're really fun. Yeah, they're fun, and I think people like reading them. And again, you're not trying to turn them into cartoons. I like to manipulate people's emotions a lot in books. I had certain feedback that, as soon as they started to hate the character, then they felt sorry for them, then they liked them, then they hated them again. They're flipping. One reviewer was telling me how she kept flipping between, and that's what I want, because that's real.
Yes.
That's what life is like. There are very few people, who are sort of saints or sinners. That's not really real. And that's the emotional roller coaster that Luna is on.
Yes.
And I wanted the reader to be with her on that roller coaster as well.
I agree with you about the idea of balancing your character with reality. And very often there are going to be questions that are never answered about the character, because real life is that way also, or for the character. Now, your next book, you have said, predates With a Good Eye. called The Inheritance. Are you taking the mother and the father? How is it predating it?
It doesn't really predating it. I don't know if I said that or if that was his control. What originally was one of the things that I did in order to write With a Good Eye, as I sort of alluded to in my previous response, is I kind of took off that whole storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put this storyline in a different book because this is crowding this book. These issues, more issues with the brother, etc. It was crowding the book. I guess I'll just leave it at that word, crowding. It was crowding my head. I don't know, but it was crowding my ability to succeed with the book. So I sort of cut off that whole storyline. I basically took a draft of 100 pages or so, 150 pages, and I split it into two. And I'm like, okay, all this is going to go into this book, and all this is going to go into this book. So I had other themes in With a Good Eye. There's a strong Jewish theme in With a Good Eye, but it was particularly a Sephardi Jewish theme. That was sort of another one of my, I don't want to say messages, but the point of writing the book is my whole life, most of the Jewish fiction I've read, the characters are Ashkenazi Jews, meaning they're of European descent, Jews. And there's all these other types that I just don't see much in literature. And if I do, then it's sort of about that, like my journey from Morocco or my journey from Iraq or my journey from Iran. And I wanted it to regular people, in Canada, in the US, in England, also have these backgrounds. They're not necessarily, that's not what the book is about. It's not about that country, but that's their lineage. So I wanted that to be in the book. All the characters are Mizrahi characters. There's Sephardi characters, but that's not what the book is about. Just the same way, if you had if your main character was an Ashkenazi character, it wouldn't be about her grandparents coming from Poland, to the US. That would just be, the food she ate and her references and the jewelry she wore, etc. So that was in With a Good Eye. I don't have that in The Inheritance. The Inheritance actually is my first novel where the family's not Jewish at all. There are no Jewish references because I've written a lot. I have, my first novel was Israel of the Future. Now it's not so much the future anymore. I think then it was supposed to be 2026. That's already already coming up, but it was the future. It was supposed to be set a decade into the future. Where Israel was divided into, it was a post-Civil War Israel and divided into a very, very secular state and a very halachic religious state. So I had done Israel of the Future. I had done White Zion, where we did go from Ottoman Empire, Turkish rule, British mandate, Palestine, into modern Israel, etc. I've done different versions of Israel, the future, the past, the imagined future, the Ottomans. I'd sort of been all over the place. Passport control is 1992 Israel, before Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, and there was a big peace movement. So I with The Inheritance, I felt I'd kind of done a lot of all different, sort of, if you think of a kaleidoscope, I'd done a lot of different sides. So it takes place in Toronto, and it's not a Jewish family. It wouldn't be necessarily obvious that The Inheritance and With a Good Eye, in their very first draft, was the same book, because I've taken out all the Jewish part, and I've just focused on a character who's, I think she's 26, 27. It's a much more adult novel. And she's in Toronto, she's an English teacher, and she's left this family behind. But then she gets called back. She's gotten away from them, and now she's getting called. So it wouldn't be immediately obvious, but I guess if you knew me and you knew my work, I guess if you listen to the interviews, you might be able to sense that I've just done different versions. But at this time, I've turned the tap on the brother, and she's got a very an estranged brother, and she can't figure him out, and she can never tell if what he's saying is the truth or lies or what's going on. And the parents have disappeared, and he wants her to help find them, and she doesn't know if that's true, and etc. So it's not immediately obvious, but yes, there's a direct link between the two of them. The themes are different, though. The themes are, well, again, getting away from your old life, but also sexual harassment in the workplace, elderly abuse. I tackled different themes in The Inheritance.
It sounds interesting. I look forward to reading it very much. You covered a lot of what I wanted to talk about because I was curious about heritage. And as a writer, writing in conversation with our heritage, which is what you've done a great deal, without it becoming overpowering, is quite a balancing act that you've achieved. And I was just wondering, is this, you said, it sounds like you set out to do that purposely, is to just create the heritage, but how much is just in your heart and it's the underlying foundation? Are you aware when you're writing that you're in conversation with your heritage? What is the feeling of writing to your heritage, or to the Jewish heritage? What is that makes it a different kind of writing?
Well, for me personally, I've given Luna the same genetic background as I actually have, which is an Ashkenazi mother and a Yemenite father.
Oh,
so in real life, I actually have that. And for me, I would say it's more of a reclaiming of the heritage. And same with the Hamsa, the book cover. I was very specific with the publisher that I wanted it to be a specifically Jewish Hamsa, because not all of them have a Star of David in the middle. And I knew that they wouldn't know that because I've worked with publishers before, even Simon and Schuster, and they're not as knowledgeable about Jewish covers as you think. I'll tell you some funny stories about that another time. But the point is, so for me, it was more of a reclaiming, because when I was growing up, a Hamsa, and even when I first came to Israel, was a very, I associated it with not my culture, almost like an inferior, you wear a Star of David, all my Jewish son would be a Star of David, or a Chai, or, maybe your name in Hebrew or something. But a Hamsa sort of looked down, that's kind of an inferior culture. You don't really want to be associated with that, associated with the Middle East. And that's, North America is much more, sort of something you would want to claim. And that was definitely in my youth. I wouldn't have been caught dead wearing a Hamsa, for sure not, or claiming any sort of North African heritage. I was, everyone else I grew up in Ottawa. At the time, it's completely different today, 100% different. But at that time, it's a civil servant town. It's the capital. So most people work for the federal government. So it's not an immigrant town. And it was a very, I don't even know if this term is still used, but a WASP town in those days. That's what it was called. I don't know even if that's politically correct to say anymore, but that's what it used to be called in those days. So you wanted to be, blonde. You wanted to have blue eyes. You did not want to have this olive complexion and be a brunette. That was a bad. that would not be an aspiration in those days. So I would not have claimed that. So for me, it's more of a reclaiming. But I am going to put it on the cover, and I do, and I would wear one today. And I don't think it's inferior to the other symbols from my mother's side of the family. So I would say that it's deliberate in the sense that I'm trying to reclaim those things, that I don't have to be embarrassed that my father's first language is Hebrew and his second language is Arabic and his third language is English. I don't have to be, but in those days, it would be embarrassing for him to show up at the school and for people to hear him speaking Arabic to somebody. That would not be, you would want to sort of crawl under the car, right? Because that wasn't, so it's more of a reclaiming.
Yes.
That I would say, because I cut out all that side of my heritage growing up, because it wasn't, because that's what any sensible person would do.
Yeah. And also when you're young, it's so important to fit in, to feel that you belong. And I can imagine it must have been difficult sometimes.
Right. So 100%. So I've put that in there. That's very obviously kind of in there.
Yes, it is.
Deals with it better than I do. That's a lot of writing fiction is it's wish fulfillment, right? Like this is how I should have acted.
Right.
That's when people ask me why write fiction. It's like what you would have. It's very powerful. It's what I would have wanted to have done.
That's a wonderful place to end this conversation, because it's beautifully said, and leaves all of us with something to think about deeply in relationship to writing and relationship to our relationships to our heritage, which can be so difficult at times, but very rich too. And you have mined that richness wonderfully with A Good Eye. Congratulations on that book.
Thank you. Sally.
Thank you.
I want to just mention that I just finished recording With a Good Eye will be my first audio book. So hopefully that'll be out in weeks, and then it'll be available on audio, because a lot of readers today tell me I would read it if you put it on audio. So I finally did it. This is the first book on audio.
Did you find that difficult?
You got to have a lot of patience, because I recorded it myself. Eventually, I got up at 3:34 in the morning, and the house was totally quiet, and I couldn't have any excuses, and no dogs and no kids and no people coming to the door, and I just put on my headphones, and like that was like for the second half. The first half was taking me so long because there were so many interruptions, right? And I just literally did it from like 3:30 to like something like 11 in the morning. And then I went to sleep until about 5. But it was done.
Marvelous. Congratulations on that achievement too. That's a biggie. I would be intimidated by it, but I'm very impressed with that. Thank you so much, Gila, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Sally.
My guest today was Gila Green. Her newest novel, With a Good Eye, will be published in August, but it's available now for pre-order. And if you don't understand about pre-order, it's a great way to support an author. The 500-pound or 5,000-pound gorilla, Amazon, their algorithms decide how they're going to present a book on the day of publication, based upon pre-orders, and it will actually boost the book into the search engine if you do that. It's worth ordering, and you won't be charged for it until it's sent to you, but it would be a great way to support Gila. You can connect with Gila on her website, gilagreenwrites.com, and on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll have those links for you in the next slide. As for me, my 2 newest books are Of Being Woman, a collection of feminist science fiction from Noble Fusion Press, and Daughters of Eve, which is from Byte Publishing, and it's an essay-based workbook and journaling guide exploring the nature of our lives today through the lens of the female archetypes of the Hebrew Bible, such as Sarah, Hagar, Eve, Deborah, and so forth. My website and blog are at sallywienergrotta.com. My videos, including this one, are on YouTube, and can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and sometimes on Blue Sky. I haven't really gotten into it, and hopefully someday on Substack if I can figure it out. Thank you, everyone, for joining Gila and me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.